Welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm, having a successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. I'm Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and I've been working now with accounting professionals for more than 20 years, helping them actually start, build, and have a successful business offering quality accounting services. This podcast is dedicated to helping you as an accounting professional confidently and competently offer quality accounting services to get paid what you're worth. Universal Accounting Center, the sponsor of today's episode, is also actually a business that's been around since 1979, helping accounting professionals with the training, certification, coaching, and support necessary to offer quality accounting services, whether it be starting and building accounting businesses, training your staff, or moving into more consultative or advisory services. Universal Accounting Center is committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. I'm excited today to have a special guest, someone that I've interacted with on numerous occasions and someone I'm sure you're familiar with and will love to get to know a little bit better. It's Mark Wickersham. Mark happens to be a chartered accountant, public speaker, and author. He is known as the most sought-after profit improvement expert in the accounting community. In fact, Mark is also widely published as an author on practice issues related to accounting professionals. His book, Effective Pricing for Accountants, was a #1 Amazon bestseller, and Mark was shortlisted in the Accounting Web as the Outstanding Contributor to Accounting Award. Now, with this, I've got the pleasure of working with Mark on a collaborative pricing study that we did just recently, and that'll come up within our discussion. But Mark, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction. That was outstanding.
Well, you are the guy, right?
Thank you.
Well, here's the thing. I want to go back a little bit here and kind of give everybody a little bit of a history to give them an understanding of how you've gotten to the point that you are. So share with us how you got started into the accounting profession.
Yeah, okay. It was all a big accident because when I was at school, I studied economics. That was kind of my favorite subject. And I went to university and then decided it sounded quite cool to do a joint degree, a degree that was called economics and accounting. And I did that. But then by the end of the first year, I realized I hated the accounting so much. I dropped it and did a straight economics degree. So I never intended to be an accountant. But as it happened, by the start of the third year, this was 1990, in the UK, a lot of people went into the accounting industry from university, and they had what was called a milk round, where accounting firms would come to the university and interview you. And so someone persuaded me to go along and do a few interviews. As it happened, I got offered a job right at the start of my third year in university that wasn't contingent on me getting a degree. So I could really enjoy year 3, the final year of university, knowing that I got a job at the end of it. And I thought to myself, well, I have no idea what I want to do in my life. It can't do any harm to do 3 years of professional qualifications and get another qualification off the back of my degree. So that was really it. That's how I fell into accountancy.
Well, what you just described, I think, is often quite normal. Somebody gets into the college experience. They don't know why they're there. They're doing the general studies. And all of a sudden, one thing leads to another. And before they know it, they're somehow in the accounting profession. For some, it's out of love. For others, it's just out of dumb luck, if we could describe it that way. And all of a sudden, you look back 20 years later and you're like, oh, my heavens, look at the path I took. And I didn't realize those decisions I was making back then, how they were going to impact me. And here you are today. So you finished the college experience, you're done with the university. What happens next?
Well, I went through the traditional route of doing a training contract, I was fortunate, I qualified after 3 years as a chartered accountant in the UK. I then realized I hated doing audit work, so I was seconded into the tax department, did taxes for 3 years. But I kind of realized that I didn't want to be, I wasn't an ideal employee. I didn't like being told what to do. And I want to do something else.
That's a problem.
It is a problem. I mean, I think I'm unemployable because I don't take to being told what to do. And I didn't realize that, but after then I moved on somewhere else for a few months and worked for a smaller firm, and then realized that I just don't like this being an employee business. So I set up my own accounting firm. This was in May 1996. I had no clients. I just realized I wanted to do something different with my life. I wanted to be in control of it. So I started my accounting firm in 96 and grew it incredibly fast, made crazy mistakes. But it was another part of my then journey And despite all the mistakes that I made, it then kind of took me to the next level of the journey, which was then the opportunity to work with other accounting firms. And that's kind of where I am today now.
All right. Well, but we're going to back up. I want to get back to why in the world would you start your own business? I realize you considered yourself a difficult employee, but to become an entrepreneur, to start your own business, that's a big leap. That's quite ambitious. What caused you to believe you could start your own business, and how did that look? I mean, you mentioned mistakes. What was that like that first year, perhaps?
Yeah, it was. I mean, partly the reason was because I wanted to be in control of my future. I wanted the opportunity to earn more money.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the opportunity to build something of value. But actually, the single biggest reason, the single biggest driver for me was I wanted to choose the hours I worked.
Wow.
Because I didn't like this idea of being told you could have 20 days holiday a year and that was it. And so I thought, you know what, I want more holiday. I want to enjoy myself. And so that was the primary driver, being able to choose when I worked.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, so it was exciting for me, May 1996, when I took that leap. But then what I realized is things didn't go quite the way I planned.
All right. So what didn't go well?
Nothing really went well. I was, in some respects, if you looked at my practice in the first few years, you might have thought I was successful because I grew insanely fast. I seemed to be good at marketing. I was winning clients all over the place. I'd moved from a room in my bedroom to my first offices within 2.5 months.
Wow.
And at the same time hired 3 people. And then 15 months later, I'd outgrown those, moved to much bigger premises. And within about 3 or 4 years, there was a team of 13 of us.
Love it.
So I'd grown fast. And so it might have looked like I was successful growing this big business with nice big premises, lots of clients. The reality was that by the end of 1998, 2.5 years in, my life was in a complete mess. And the thing that I found, which was the thing that disheartened me the most, was yes, I didn't make any money. My debts were spiraling out of control. But the really bad thing was I was working crazy hours more than as an employee. I found that I had to be the first in the office every morning because I had the key. So I had to unlock the door for everybody. I was the last to leave because, again, I had the key. So I had to lock the door. I didn't have lunch breaks. I just worked straight through because I'd built this crazy business. And then the worst thing was for 2.5 years of my life, I went into the office every single Saturday morning because that was the only opportunity I had to catch up with the invoicing, the bookkeeping, and all the things I had to do to run this business because I was crazy busy during the week just dealing with and reacting to problems from clients and with the team and all these other things, firefighting all the time.
So did you ever give anybody else the key?
No, because a mistake we make when we start a business, and certainly I made for the first few years, is we want to be in control of everything. Mm-hmm. I was a control freak, and I wanted to do everything, and you can't do that. Sometimes you've got to let go. Sometimes you've got to trust other people, and it took me 3 years to realize that. And then I went on an interesting journey, met some interesting people, and started to change my mindset, my practice. I went through what I call a re-engineering process, and was very fortunate that I was able to change my firm fairly quickly after the mess that I'd built.
But that mess you're describing is a mess I think a lot of our listeners can really relate to. What you're describing is, I think, quite common. As you grow the business, it's only natural that the entrepreneur has the opinion that only they can do the business or do the task as well as it needs to be done, that nobody else can do it to their level of satisfaction. And it's that mentality of, I've got to be there at the beginning of the day, I've got to be there at the end of the day. And this baby that you're building, that you're raising, you just become this helicopter parent of sorts, that you're just controlling the office. And at some point you look back and go, I'm working nights and weekends. I'm not taking vacations or holiday. I'm in a position where I'm not working on my business to control what it's becoming. I'm just consumed by it, and I'm working in it. And at the end of the day, the one thing that you created the business to accomplish, you don't have.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Michael Gerber, and he says it like this: is that often people go into business to escape the bad boss they had, and then soon find they're working for a worse boss, a boss that makes them work crazy hours, work weekends, and doesn't have any money to take home at the end of it.
Yeah.
And that was very much me for several years.
Well, Gerber, he does a great job of saying that what happens is it's a technician, someone that has a specific skill set, in this case, the accountant, having what's referred to as an entrepreneurial seizure. They think that they can go out and do it better than the boss they have. And they go out and start this company, not realizing that there's so much more to it. And then it's only in hindsight that they realize, oh my heavens, if I didn't do this correctly, I could get trapped here. And so that's when you start to work on your business and really take control of it. So yeah, I love Gerber actually. The E Myth is a phenomenal book.
Well, it's not just a phenomenal. I personally think that one book should be compulsory reading for any business owner, including every accountant,
Yeah.
because it is so insightful. And I'm very proud to have one of my prized possessions is a signed copy of the book.
There you go.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
So tell me, you come to this realization 3 years into your business. You realize that yes, you're successful. You've grown your business. You've got these 13 employees. You've got the clientele. In many ways, you've actually built a successful business, but it isn't the business you hoped for. It's not the lifestyle you wanted. So what's that change? It's almost like an intervention is coming. What happened at that point that then caused you to say, I need to do something different?
I think it was a chain of events that all started when I first met. I went on a 3-day event at the end of 1998 called the Accountants Masterclass, which was run by someone I'd never heard of called Steve Pipe.
Uh-huh.
And he completely changed the way I thought about running a business. So much so that over the course of 1999, I changed so much that Steve kept asking me what I kept sharing my successes with Steve, and he's now one of my closest friends in the world and one of my inspirations and mentors, because he started me on a journey of realizing all the mistakes I was making. And then thanks to Steve, that inspired me to go and spend 4 days with Paul Dunn in 1999 on the Accountants Bootcamp. And then Paul Dunn introduced me to Ron Baker. And those three people, and over that period from November 98 to early 2000s, it completely changed the way I thought about running an accounting firm. And I started to go through a quite painful process of re-engineering. I had to make some difficult decisions and changes because I had to, because of the mess that I'd made. But it was all obviously part of a kind of a plan, a journey, and helped me to realize and work out, well, what is really important with running an accounting firm.
So what were the changes that you identified that needed to happen?
I think it was, well, realizing the biggest mistakes that I'd made. I'd made so many mistakes, and I know I'm not alone in this. So, the first mistake I realized was Steve Pipe told me I mentioned this idea of an ideal customer profile. And I realized that one of the mistakes I made is that I thought building an accounting firm was all about winning as many clients as possible. So I took on anybody who was looking for an account, I would take on. And I had a complete mixed bag of clients. I had some terrible clients, but I kept them because I thought you had to keep clients and because all clients were good clients. And it was Steve who introduced me to this idea of ideal client profile, about having a real marketing strategy about what is the right type of client, not take on everybody, be really choosy. And so that was a big mistake I made that I then started to change. Another big mistake I made was I hired the wrong people. I made so many hiring mistakes, which cost me huge amounts of money. Over the first 4 or 5 years, I'd hired so many people, and the vast majority cost me a fortune. They were terrible. I had a few gems in there, but they came in later years once I started to learn better hiring processes. And then, of course, my number one mistake, the one that cost me the most money, was I had no idea how to price. I grew up in the profession believing you had to price based on the timesheet. I believed you had to keep timesheets because I didn't know any different.
Yeah.
So I priced in the wrong way, and I was way too cheap because I thought it was all about winning as many clients as possible. And it wasn't until I met Ron Baker in late 1999 that he put me straight on that. That's when I first came across value pricing.
Yes.
And really that was the point for me in the end of 99 where everything changed for me. This light bulb went on. Everything Ron told me went back to, and suddenly all the things I'd learned in economics at school, all the theory suddenly made sense and about pricing. And so I made huge numbers of changes over the course of about a 2-year period, which completely changed my practice and completely changed my life.
So there's a few things I want to bring up. Obviously, you spoke of the ideal client. I think if you don't know who you're going after, whether it be your own niche marketing or an ideal customer type, if you're not going to identify it, you run into the trap that you just described, which is you take on anyone and everyone. And then all of a sudden you're a jack of all trades and you're really not doing anything that allows you to price well because you're just an anyone and everyone kind of a scenario. With Ron, great man. I've had a number of conversations with him. You're right. He does a great job of introducing to us this whole idea of value pricing and your I guess growth from that into what you're doing today is, I think, hugely important because you're so specific in the accounting world. Tell us about what you're doing and what you've learned related to accounting and pricing.
Yeah, well, a lot of what I started on the pricing journey because it was the thing that had the fastest impact on my accounting firm in the year 2000. So 2000 was a pivotal year because I completely changed the way I priced. I trashed the timesheet, price based on value, and the results were so profound for me. Two things happened as a result of that. Number one, I was able then to shortly afterwards sell my accounting firm in a management buyout. My two client managers, my two best employees, bought the practice off me a few years later, which I couldn't have done in 98, 99 because it was a mess.
Yeah.
But secondly, and even more important, was because I'd kept in touch with Steve Pipe, he asked me if I would then share my experiences and stories with his audience, his growing network of accountants in the UK. And so I did that. I spoke for Steve, and
Uh-huh.
apparently what I said hit a chord with the people in the audience because he told me afterwards my guest speaker slot was the best bit of his whole 3-day masterclass. So much so that he asked me to be the speaker at every single one after that, which is 9 or 10 a year. I spoke to rooms full of accountants.
Yeah.
And that obviously impacted on things so well that he then asked me, we went into business together, and we spent 10 years then working for a business, a network of accountants in the UK. And what I discovered between 2000 and 2010 is I was still a jack of all trades. I'd sold my accounting firm and I was teaching accountants based on the things I'd learned, but I was still hadn't kind of figured out this kind of this niche and having a specialism because I still was a jack of all trades. I taught accountants marketing, sales, how to grow a great business, how to put systems in place, the things I'd learned from the Gerber message. I taught strategy, and of course I taught pricing. And I was good at a lot of things, but it wasn't until the back end of kind of 2010 really. 2010 was when, looking back on those 10 years of working in the profession, I realized that the one thing that accountants were telling me from what they'd learned from me over and over again, where they were saying, Mark, this stuff you're teaching on pricing is profound. These are the results I'm getting. I'm doubling my prices. I'm getting this result. And I was realizing that everyone I was teaching was getting amazing results from the pricing bit. And it got me thinking, nobody at 2010, there was nobody else in the UK teaching pricing to the profession. In fact, globally around the world in 2010, I believe that Ron Baker was the only person in the profession teaching pricing. And so I decided in 2010, I had to specialize. This is stuff is work. It's worked for me in my practice. It changed my life. It's changed the life of hundreds of UK accountants. So that's why I made the decision in 2010. Do you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be known as the world's leading thought leader on accounting for the accounting profession. I made that decision. I wrote my first book in 2010. It was published in May 2011. As you said at the outset, that first book went to number one on Amazon in the UK across all business books. And that's really the start of my pricing journey proper. I then made that decision that will be all I teach. And very fortunately, my name kind of then got out. I got invited by Intuit to speak over at Knecht in the US. And I had no idea that I would be so well received in the US. So they asked me to speak every single year. I speak at Scaling Heights every single year. And actually, interestingly, most of my audience is now from the US and Canada. I don't do so much in the UK. So it's been an incredible journey. And it's all been this realization that something about the way I teach pricing seems to resonate with fellow accountants and bookkeepers. And I think it's also one of the things I'm told is people tell me they love it, the fact that I teach it from the how-tos, the specific systems, because I'm a fan of Gerber. I love systems. I'm an accountant myself. I'm very systematic in my thinking. So when I think of pricing, value pricing is very difficult. It's conceptually very difficult. And what I've been striving to do for 20 years is to teach it in such a way where I can teach it as steps. Do this first, do this second, do these steps, and you'll get results.
So let me break in here, and I'm just going to make mention of a few things as a sponsor to kind of add to this discussion that we have here. Mark has been very kind to add, as part of this episode, some free information. So I'd like to just kind of share with you what some of these sponsored items are that you can take advantage of by going to the episode description. You'll find their information regarding some free software. In November of 2019, he created a software for calculating a fixed price for bookkeeping services. Also, there's a free ebook. In this ebook, he'll actually share with you 5 key fundamentals for pricing bookkeeping services. And then lastly, there is a free live training with him every month that you can participate in, as well as a group. And that's basically there to create a community that allows peers, accounting professionals, to really get the information and support they need to offer quality services and get paid what they're worth. So I love that you're providing that. The second thing I'd like to mention is Universal Accounting Center is providing the book In the Black. It's the 9 principles of basically running and operating a successful, profitable accounting business. These 9 principles are meant to actually help you run your business confidently and competently. The beauty of it is it complements extremely well what E-Myth addresses in Michael Gerber's book, what you need to be knowing as a technician running your business as an entrepreneur to be successful, really beginning with the end in mind and having, as Mark described, the systems needed to run a business effectively. Now, with that being said, you've brought up pricing. You're the expert, or one of the renowned experts in there. I know Ron's name gets mentioned. Your name gets mentioned. There are a few others that come to mind. But what's the biggest mistake that you see accounting firms getting stuck into that is commonly out there? And then give me an idea of really what is the success that someone can expect if and when they implement proper pricing strategies?
Oh, wow. That's such a broad question, Roger. What's the biggest mistake? There's so many mistakes that we make in the profession with pricing. It's actually quite hard to say what is the number one, because there are so many. There are lots of mistakes and also lots of myths. And I think that one of the biggest myths is that we believe that we have price-sensitive customers. And actually, the reality is an accounting firm doesn't have any price-sensitive customers. And people sometimes think I've gone mad when I say that. That doesn't make sense, because there clearly are price-sensitive people in society. But research done in the world of price psychology and behavioral economics estimate that the number of people who are price-sensitive in society is actually quite a small number. And they are not business owners or entrepreneurs or high-net-worth individuals. You see, most people in society, I'm guessing you as well, Roger, and I certainly am, we are value sensitive. And that's a very different thing. It doesn't mean that price isn't important, but for most people, when we buy based on the size of the profit on the deal. If we feel we're going to get more back than the price we pay, we will buy. Mm-hmm. And so price is just one component of the value equation. And the mistake we make in the profession is because we think people are price sensitive, when we and because we want to win work, we give a price that we think they will say yes to, which is almost always way below what we could have got. And I've been in all my teachings and working with accountants for the last 20 years or so. I find over and over again people are telling me, I can't believe it. I've managed to get double the price I thought I would have got before. Sometimes treble. Sometimes I saw one bookkeeper tell me on my Facebook he got 7 times the price, because when we understand, and it's kind of it's a mindset thing, but when we understand that people aren't price sensitive, they're value sensitive, we start to then focus on the value, not the price. The more our conversation focuses on value, then the more people understand that, and price becomes less of an issue.
Yes.
The reason why I think people think their clients are price sensitive is because they've revealed a price at some point in time, and the reaction they get is, wow, that's expensive. And when we get that reaction, it's natural to think, okay, well, that means that customer is price sensitive. And when we hear lots of people say that's expensive, we start to think everyone's price sensitive. But the reality is we have to understand, why do people say that's expensive? Because I know that every accountant and bookkeeper I work with is not expensive. So that can't be true. The reason why a customer says that's expensive is because they don't understand the value. And that's our fault, because we haven't communicated the value in the right way. We haven't built enough value. We've not communicated it. We've focused our conversation on price. And so if we don't build up the value in their mind, if we don't properly explain it and communicate it, it's a natural knee-jerk reaction for a customer to say, that's expensive. That's more than I was expecting.
Yeah, what you're describing there is, I think, a great point, because sometimes we misunderstand when someone says that's too expensive. You've said it exactly right. It's not that they can't afford it, it's they don't see the correlating value to justify the expense that's being asked. And so it's not so much to say that they can't afford it or there's no way they can see doing it. They're saying the correlation of value to what it's costing is not balanced, or it's not fair, or it's not right. And all of a sudden they're trying to say to you, and the best way they know how to communicate it is, that's too expensive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
And
So,
a lot of people think value pricing is just about coming up with the price, but it's so much more to that. Value pricing, the art of value pricing is not just the way you come up with the price, but it's actually the way you communicate value, the way you build value, the way you communicate value. Words are so important.
good. Okay. So, with that in mind, what have you seen as people implement these proper pricing strategies? How has it changed people's lives as they've run their accounting firms? Have they experienced epiphanies where they actually feel like they now have value and are being profitable?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm blessed with is, as I work with so many amazing people, and I work with hundreds of accountants and bookkeepers around the world, largely the US, Canada, and the UK and South Africa. And because I have a large Facebook community, which I know you're aware of, I get success stories every single week. People saying to me, "Mark, I've done this. I've tried your menu pricing idea. I've tried this idea. I've had a go at this, and I've got double the fee or whatever." I have people. I teach a process of how you can increase your prices for existing clients, and it's a process that I've been teaching for 20 years. It's a process I did in my accounting firm, and it's a process that, for me, I increased my average price across my entire accounting firm by 20% with almost no loss of clients. And in the last 20 years, I've had, I would guess, into the hundreds of stories of people saying they followed that process and they've increased their average price by over 20% in their accounting firm. And in many cases, without losing clients. And if you do the math and think about that, that might not sound a lot, but if you're a practice with, let's say, 500,000 of fees, if you put your price up by 20%, that's 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
There's no change to your cost structure. That's 100 grand straight to bottom line profit. And so this is stuff that I'm privileged that there's so many people whose lives are being changed. And that's what drives me to do more of this. This is why I love pricing, because I love this profession. I never teach outside the profession. I'm an accountant. I actually only care about the accounting profession. But I love what I teach because I have so many wonderful people that are listening to what I do, following the ideas, and then saying to me, "Mark, thank you. You've changed my life." That's what drives me on.
Yeah. Well, what you're describing, I think, is very, very realistic. It's something that each of the listeners, I'm sure, are able to identify with. So many of them are oftentimes starting with hourly pricing, and then they get into a situation where they see that they need to move from that to either menu pricing or value pricing or revenue price. Well, all of these changes as to how they calculate their fee and offer their services to their clients, that evolution is oftentimes difficult because it's new to them, and they run the risk of losing clients. And so they build that up in their mind. And so there's a fear factor that steps in. And what I love how you're describing is, when following a process, you can ensure that not only do you get the increase in the fees that you deserve, but more importantly, you retain so many of the clients that you have that you were perhaps fearing you would lose. So there's a peace of mind that comes when you follow a proven process to know, you know what, there is a way to accomplish this. And that's one of the things that I think is so important, because not only do you talk about there's a better way to be pricing our accounting services, but you also discuss a methodology to transition to it.
Absolutely, because for me, that's critical. As I said before, I'm a huge fan of Michael Gerber, and I think we need systems, because we are, as a profession, we're systematic. We want somebody to tell us the steps. What's step one? What's step two? And the reason I do it that way is because, unfortunately, value pricing is difficult. It's insanely difficult because value is subjective. And as my friend Ron Baker says, values in the hearts and minds of customers. Everybody's different. Everyone values things differently. We can't touch it. We can't feel it. And that's where people come unstuck. They think, well, okay, so how do I price based on value? And because it's such a difficult concept, a lot of people just give up. And so the way I've been teaching in recent years is, let's not move. If you're on hourly billing right now, to try and move from hourly to value pricing in one go is going to lead to failure. It's too big a leap. It's too much of a leap into the unknown. And so the way I teach it is, you've got to do it in steps, in little baby steps. Take one thing at a time. Pricing
Yeah.
a journey. The hardest part of the journey is very often the first step. It's moving from hourly. If you keep timesheets and bill on the hour, the biggest challenge people have is, well, how do I give a fixed price up front? Fixed pricing is not value pricing, but nevertheless, it's a better way of pricing. It's fair on the customer to give a fixed price, but you need a system to then give a fixed price with confidence that that will cover your costs and give you a profit.
Well, the thing that I like about this is when we also teach this, obviously the transition from hourly to fixed pricing, you need to have a system or a formula to calculate that fixed pricing. And the accounting profession finds, I think, a good deal of peace knowing that whether I go to client A, B, or C, I use the same formula to then calculate the fee for those services at that fixed pricing level. And then I believe what you're going to say next is after fixed pricing comes menu pricing.
Absolutely, because once you've given a fixed price is just another form of cost-based plus pricing. It's not value pricing.
Yeah.
It's a big misconception in the profession. People think, oh, I'm fixed pricing.
Thank you for saying that.
No. The fixed pricing, the way that the profession does it, is based on their best guess of how many hours. It's a form of cost plus pricing.
Yes.
But it's still better than hourly. And
it's not value.
Absolutely. And so the next step is then, the next safe step or easy step is then to move to menu pricing, which it means giving different choices, giving the client a choice of packages. And that starts to become value pricing. It's not value pricing in a pure sense of the word, but it's a start in that direction because the customer then gets to choose the package based on their perception of the value of that package. And so the way that I teach it is, even if you're wedded to your cost structures and whatever, fine, make your cheapest package based on cost if you have to start with, but start to get creative with the other packages, knowing it's a safe way to value price, because the worst that happens is the client chooses the cheapest one. But actually very often, and there's some psychology behind it and some reasons, they actually choose the middle or the most expensive one. And if you price it right, you can start making a lot more profit in that way.
Yes, and there's a way, after you've had in place for some time the fixed pricing, you become acquainted with your clients and what services you're offering they appreciate and value most and what they're paying for, that allows you to then transition to the menu pricing and actually come up with those three buckets as you've described. So going from fixed to menu, there's actually a process, a system that you can use to determine what those buckets are going to look like and what are those packages. And then as you're describing it, you can then move into revenue pricing, but more importantly, value pricing. And value pricing, Ron does a good job of describing it, but tell us what true value pricing is.
Yeah, so for me, value pricing is about pricing. You set your price based on how much the customer values it. The more they value what you do, the higher your price can and should be. Now, there's two aspects to that. It's the amount that somebody values what you do is partly a function of what you actually do. So that's the value you provide. If you can help them save more tax, the value goes up. But the value that they perceive is also important. It's their perception of value. So we can increase the perception of value not through doing anything different, but simply getting better at using the right language patterns to explain value. I've had so many cases of people I've taught say to me they've doubled their price without changing what they've done. They just simply changed the way they've communicated what they've done and what they do for the client, and the client is now willing to pay a much higher price. And so, and I've actually forgotten what your question was, Roger. I was kind of going.
No. You're. Well, I was saying define what value pricing is, and I think you've done a good job of it. What I would add is that when you get to a true essence of value pricing, what you're doing is you're assessing the value that the individual client receives from the work you're doing, and it varies from client to client. What you're doing in 10 hours and the deliverable you're producing for that single client may have a value of, let's say, $50,000 or $10,000. You're going to then ask for a percent of that, but you may do the exact same service for client B, and in that same amount of time actually generate $50,000 or $100,000 worth of value. And service value that you're giving to that second client is twice as much. Therefore, in essence, your fee is going to be twice as large, simply because even though it's the same deliverable and it's the same service and time, the client is each receiving a monetary value that is unique, and you're getting a percent of it. And so for one client, you're saving them 50,000, the other client 100,000. Well, client A is paying you, let's say, X, and you're getting double that with client B. So the value pricing takes on a whole level of opportunity for you as a business owner to offer services in the accounting space that really impact businesses where it matters most, which is basically on the bottom line or in the tax savings. And because you deliver that value, you're able to then correspondingly charge your fee.
Absolutely. And what I love about it is that it's when we know that we have a system and that we get rewarded based on value, suddenly what happens is we start realizing we're going to earn more money if we can spot opportunities to help our clients become more successful, to add more value.
Yeah.
And so we now start to look actively for those opportunities in our client base, because we make more money, but it's also better for the clients, because if we're now much more focused on the bigger opportunities and helping clients and making it and changing people's lives, the clients win as well. And so we're on the same side of the table, we both want the same thing. We want to deliver as much value to our clients as possible, change their lives, knowing that we have a pricing system where we get rightly rewarded for doing exactly that.
So what it's doing is you're helping educate the accounting professional to realize that the value of their service is no longer the production of the accounting reports, the financial reports, and the tax return. The value of the service is in the net dollars that they're able to save or make for the client, and then getting paid not on the task, but on the deliverable.
Correct, yes. So our focus should be on the end result. How can we change somebody's life? And even something as simple as, for example, setting a client up on a cloud accounting system like QBO, that actually has big implications in terms of the time it can save the client. Their information is more accurate, up to date. That means they can make better business decisions. If they can make better business decisions because they've got a better accounting system, they can therefore grow their business faster because they've got better information. We're not just setting somebody up with QBO, an accounting system. It's much more than that. And what we have to become better at is recognizing how are we actually impacting on the client's life, and how can we communicate that in such a way the client thinks, oh, wow, that's going to be so valuable. That's worth paying a lot of money for.
I love how you describe that. I think that's an excellent recap of this whole thing. So let me transition. I'm going to change something here. Here you are, you're at this stage of your career, you're having this impact as you are around the world, literally with accounting firms, helping them adopt this new pricing strategy and move towards it. So look back over the last 30 years and the evolution you've experienced. If you go back to the 1990s and you talk to yourself, your old Mark, your younger, I should say, younger Mark, as you know the challenges that he's going to face in the early 90s as he's building the business, even though he grew such a great company, what advice would you give him knowing where you are today? What would you say to him as he's going through the challenges, especially?
Oh, wow. Great question. I think there would be, if I could give myself advice back then, there were probably three key things, which I've sort of touched on, but I think it's worth recapping. So for me, the three key things, if I could change anything, number one is have complete certainty as to who is the right client and who is the wrong client, and be comfortable with turning work away. So that's number one, having a proper marketing strategy. Number two would be, quite obviously, get the price right from the outset. Don't worry about not winning every piece of work. We can't afford to win every piece of work, because for us in the accounting profession, most of what we do, if not all of it, is working with people one-on-one. And so our time is our scarcest resource. We owe it to ourselves to make sure that every hour we spend working with clients is at a fair reward. If we're working on clients' affairs at a low price, we are missing out on the opportunity to get better paid doing some work with somebody else. So pricing is critical, because we can't get that time back. It's gone forever. And then number three, which we haven't touched on, but this one's different, is number three if I was starting from scratch again, as well as focusing on the right pricing strategy and having the right clients, I'd then be thinking about going back to marketing again properly. How one of the things that in the profession we are really bad at is we don't know how to build lists. And so accountants are terrible at marketing. And I mean, even the people in my Value Pricing Academy said to me the other day, most of them have a list, i.e. the contact details of prospects, that totals 0. They don't have anybody in their database. And yet one of the things I've learned in marketing is that the size of your income is proportional to the size of your list. And so we want to become obsessed with of building a list of ideal prospects. And in this day and age, that's really easy to do. It's about, as you'll know yourself, Roger, it's about creating something, an ebook, something that positions you as an expert, because personal branding is so important, and then giving your knowledge away in that way for free in return for capturing details. Because if we can do that, we do two things. Number one, the free information we give out positions us as the expert. And in the industry, our industry, we're knowledge experts. If we want to get the right clients and be better paid, win more business, we want to demonstrate that we've got knowledge and we're at a superior level. We're better than the cheap accountant down the road or the cheap bookkeeper. We have to position ourselves right. And when we do that in the right way, we can use that to build up a list of prospects, of people who want that knowledge, who want something for free from us. And that then starts the process of building a relationship, which we can automate with today's technology. We can automate that relationship building process so then when somebody's ready to change accountant or change bookkeeper, you are the first person they think of because you've been sending them valuable stuff. And the reason why a lot of people don't do that is partly because of lack of knowledge, but also they don't have the time to do it. And so anybody starting a business, that's the best time to put the marketing foundations in place. I was in too much of a hurry when I started. I just want to win clients. I just want to go out there, get clients because I want to get started. But actually, I wish I'd paused and spent a month or so thinking more strategically about who's the right client. How am I going to position myself as the expert? What material will I use? Back in those days, I taught tax. How can I build up my expertise and my positioning as the tax expert? And how could I use that to then build up a big list of people so I could then attract a steady stream of the right type of client and then price that in the right way? That would have just made my life so much easier.
Great advice for your younger self and some excellent questions to obviously be asking. So here's a nice little end to this discussion. You've obviously been very successful. You've traveled extensively. As I speak to you now, you're in Spain. I'm imagining you're right now looking out over the Mediterranean. So tell me how are things right now for you? Are you in a good place?
I have to say, right now, things are pretty amazing. I've had this dream for the last 10 years that I've been building and working towards. I do an annual goal-setting process that I've done for many years that works for me. And I always think about, well, what does success mean for me? What is success? And I know everyone's got a different definition of success, but for me, it's about being happy, ultimately being happy in life. We only get one shot at this. And so we want to be as happy as possible. And so I've often asked the question, so what makes me happy? What makes me happy? What do I love to do? And interestingly, a few years back, I read a great book actually called Happy by Derren Brown. Derren Brown is well known in the UK. He's an amazing illusionist, but he wrote a book called Happy. And he looked at what makes people happy. And no surprise, it's not money. It's not fame. And I won't tell you just yet, but I kind of realized it made sense about what makes you happy. And I started thinking about all this in a kind of a deep way. And I started thinking about, well, what makes me unhappy? And one of the things I hate is the weather in the UK. It's too cold, unpredictable, rains too much. I love the sun. I'm a cyclist. I love cycling out, and I cycle almost every single day. If I could, or it will be 5 or 6 days a week. And so I want to be somewhere where the weather's nice, blue sky every day. But to do that, I then thought, okay, well, that means I have to change my business. I have to have a business which is scalable, but it's also a virtual business. I can run it from anywhere in the world. So for the last 10 years, I've been working towards that. And in the last year or so, that's actually happened. I've bought this house in Spain. We are in 2 weeks' time off to Portugal to perhaps get a house in Portugal as well. I love traveling to the US. We come we come twice a year, Sarah and I, to QB Connect and Scale New Heights, and we always turn to a vacation. There are some amazing people in the US which we love to hook up with and meet with as well. So I get to travel a lot to amazing places. I get to spend my time in the sun now, and so it's going back to this thing about success and what makes you happy. It's about sitting down and creating a plan, which I did some years, not overnight. It doesn't happen overnight, but I had to figure out in my life, what are the things I don't want? What are the things I have to change? I don't like the English weather. I had to figure out what I don't want, and then what I do want. And going back to the book called Happy by Derren Brown, the one thing he said that makes people happy more than anything else, it's about having a purpose in life, feeling you have something to contribute to life. And it was interesting when I read that, because my goal has always been, my reason for being is I want to change this profession. I love the accounting profession. I'm proud of being a chartered accountant. I believe that accountants can change the world. We can change the lives of businesses. It's a noble profession. It's a great profession. And I want to change the lives of as many people as possible. And I'm very fortunate and blessed that I now have a business structure that I've been working on and building, a virtual business that enables me to live the life I want, where I want, go out on the bike every single day, but also impact on the lives of as many accountants around the world as I possibly can, which is why I have a virtual business. I never work one-to-one, partly because I'm an introvert. It scares me talking one-to-one with people, but partly because actually forcing myself to build a scalable business, I can impact on the lives of many more people.
Well, I'm happy for you, and I loved how you described living purposely. And the way I also would add to that is living with intent. You're very, very well spoken in the sense that you have goals, you're living with intent, and you've accomplished a lot of what you're striving for. And I commend you on that, because I know it's been a journey, and it's great that you're where you're at. And I look forward to hearing more about what you're able to do in the coming years with your move to Portugal and such. I think everything you've described is so relevant to everyone that's listening in, only because we each have our own goals, the things that we're striving to accomplish. And if we live to work, we're in trouble. But if we work to live, we're going to be doing great. So thank you for that. Let me just kind of break away here for a quick second and just mention a word about our sponsor. Mark has done such a great job in offering for us in the episode description some things that you'll want to take advantage of. First of all, the free software that I had mentioned that helps you calculate your fixed price for your bookkeeping services to help you on the journey towards offering valued pricing services. The other happens to be the free ebook as the 5 fundamentals for pricing bookkeeping services, as well as the live training that he does as a webinar every month, and the support group that is available for you to participate in Facebook. With that, we also want to encourage you to get your free copy of the book In the Black. It's 9 principles to make your business profitable and help you actually run an effective accounting business and apply these principles in your company so you can deliberately build the business that you would like to have. So with those things in mind, let me kind of recap what I have on my mind as we've had this conversation. And Mark's just done such a great job of helping us kind of relate to that journey of starting and building a business and see the evolution that he's had as he's now giving back to the accounting community. Perhaps one of the most important things that we all need to understand is how to most effectively and efficiently price our services so that we can quickly offer some quality services and get paid what we're worth. And most importantly, be profitable when we're providing these services. And as you are an expert in this field, I appreciate you eloquently describing how that is accomplished and implemented in the firm, and that there is a process that one can follow to move from hourly towards offering eventually value-based pricing. So with that in mind, is there a final thought that you'd like to share here, Mark, as we're wrapping things up?
Oh, wow. So many thoughts going through my mind. That was an amazing summary of everything. Not that I can think of. If you've got anything specific, I mean, I've had great fun sharing, as I always do, some of the things along my journey, things I've learned, and I do hope that there's something I've said, there's a nugget there, something that's resonated with the listener, and they've thought, wow, that makes perfect sense. That's me, and now I have an idea of how I can change that and change my life, because that's, for me, if I can change people's lives, that's what drives me on. That's my reason why.
Well, very well said. I've enjoyed meeting you, meeting your wife and family. I'm looking forward to the next time we can get together. Just before this, I was mentioning to Mark that I was on recording a session with Martin Bishop and spoke with Andy North recently. So it's great to have these common names coming up because everybody comments on one another. And it's just been beautiful to have this community and this story as we are sharing it right now. So let me just kind of recap some things here. I do want to encourage you to listen not only to this episode, but the other episodes that we have to help you build the premier accounting firm. And obviously encourage you to subscribe to this podcast and listen to it regularly as you learn the tips and tricks that you need in order to have the premier accounting business in your area. For more information on how you can apply these principles in your company, we invite you also to go to universalaccountingschool.com and there get some information that may actually help you with your training, certifications, coaching, and support so that you can be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And we also invite you to call us at 801-265-3777. And with all that being said, just remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. Thank you and have a great day.